Whether you're looking for answers to specific life questions or seeking to become the best version of you possible, welcome to the Mental Breakdown and Psych Reg podcast, where we offer insight, information, and strategies based upon research and years of practice as clinical psychologists. So sit back, have a listen, and get connected with our hosts, Dr. Berney Wilkinson and Dr. Richard Marshall. Welcome back, and here we are again with another episode. We have another guest.
We do.
Richard, and I'm so excited because I think that this is the farthest telephone conference I've had with anyone in my life.
Through the magic of technology that you love so much.
That's right.
We've been able to do this.
It is amazing. And what's wonderful is our guest today is from Australia, and which means that he already knows what's going to happen the rest of the day here today because it's Sunday morning there.
That's why I had to know. I want to know what tomorrow's going to bring.
So it's really exciting. We're really excited to have Ryan Anderson with us today. We're going to talk a little bit, and it's perfectly timed because this show is going to go out just before Valentine's Day, and so we're going to. Ryan's research is all about relationship, and so I'm really excited because there's some concepts and all that he's researching that I'm really interested in. So.
Looking forward to this one.
So before let's introduce Ryan. You let us know a little bit about Ryan as we're getting started.
Ryan Anderson is a PhD candidate in the discipline of psychology at James Cook University, Australia. He holds a Bachelor of Science and a Bachelor of Psychology with honors. His research interests include mathematics and statistics, evolutionary psychology, cognitive psychology, and social psychology. His dissertation, which was submitted for examination in 2016, was on the area of human mate copying.
Yeah.
Hence the link to Valentine's Day.
That is the main link to Valentine's Day, but in that description, I have so many things I would love to talk to you about.
I was going to ask that. Ryan, we need to talk to you about evolutionary psychology too.
Yes.
So we're going to call back someday and have another one.
Sure. But as we're getting started, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. So let's start out. Just tell us a little bit about what human mate copying is.
Okay, so human mate copying it's all about information gain. So it's a way in which members of species can get information about members of the opposite sex without going through the hassle of actually dating them. Okay, so that eliminates kind of an expensive trial and error process, like is this mate good, is he not good, is he good, etc. So members of one gender can gain mate relevant information about the opposite sex just by observing them, observing who they're with, observing how popular they are, who likes them, who doesn't like them, etc. So by simple virtue of having been selected by an opposite sex person in the past as a partner, a man or a woman indicates that they have some kind of desirable mate qualities, all right? Because they've attracted a girlfriend or a boyfriend previously, there's probably something about them that has allowed them to do that. So copying the mate preferences of, let's say, females copying the mate preferences of other females is kind of like purchasing a product after having seen someone use it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. So it's very much, and I can see where there's this connection with your interest in evolutionary psychology because you increase the likelihood of a positive mate pairing if you see somebody who has been successful or who has engaged in a relationship in the past.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's great. Now, what led you into studying mate copying, but of course the study of human relationships in general?
Well, I guess I've always been really interested in human relationships, the way they form, the way they're maintained, the way they persist, etc. And when you reduce down the biology of human species, relationships are really what it's all about. Like, we need to find mates in order to continue the species. So it's kind of something that is pretty important for us to understand. And so I guess I've always kind of been instinctively drawn to it on the basis of how important I think it is. I guess as a concept, I can't really think of anything that is more important for humans to understand than relationships, because it's something that we all need to do at some point in our lives. And so it's something we should all be, aware of and understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ryan, I have a question about that. Mate copying.
Yep.
You mentioned it in the context of you don't have to go through the ritual of dating.
Yeah.
That no doubt when you got into this area of research, were you thinking about it for its practical implications or for evolutionary implications?
I guess the latter, the evolutionary / kind of theoretical implications of mate copying. Obviously, it has numerous practical applications, but we're kind of at a point in research now where we're still only really beginning to appreciate the theory behind it. So we haven't really gone into the complex applications that mate copying has. And so I guess my interest is more in the theoretical aspect of mate copying and how it helps us on an evolutionary level.
And when you use the term copying,
yep,
is that meant to imply that we watch others and then we copy what they do?
Yeah, kind of. It's not a straight imitation game. It's not like mimicry. A lot of this is happening on an unconscious level.
Okay.
So we're observing people's behavior, and unconsciously we're using that to create judgments about the person. So the copying is more of an implicit kind of copying, I guess, rather than explicit, someone says raise your hand, or you're not actually copying in the sense of mimicry or imitation per se.
Yeah.
Right. It sounds like it's not cognizant. We're not cognizant that we're copying, but at the same time, we see. It reminds me of those old modeling studies where, with like the Bobo doll and stuff, where you see somebody, in a relationship, or you see someone, and it's like you just sort of unconsciously know that they must be successful at that. They must be pretty good at that. Exactly. So it's okay.
Exactly. It's it's incorporating a lot of implicit information into what you already know. So it's, like I said before, it's a way of gaining information, but it's not as traditionally expensive. So it doesn't necessarily involve the actual dating process.
Right. So it's less expensive, as you said, from a time perspective and an energy perspective and emotional. Yeah. And I think about, I think about too the implications of this, because I certainly see it from an evolutionary perspective, but I think about it too from a clinical perspective. We work with a lot of patients, and you can certainly see how, someone feels much better about their opportunities if they've had at least one successful opportunity in the past.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this kind of applies way beyond relationships into even social dynamics.
Absolutely.
If someone is popular, they tend to attract people. Same kind of idea with mate copying. If someone is popular with the opposite sex, or if they've been pre-approved, maybe like implicitly endorsed, then their stock, if you will, goes up.
Right. Well, it reminds me of that awesome movie, Can't Buy Me Love. And, and our listeners may remember this movie, but it was a great movie about a guy who was sort of a nerd. He was sort of an outcast, generally speaking. And he found himself in a situation where he could basically trade services to this very popular girl that if she pretended to be his girlfriend for a certain amount of time, then he would, I think it was, buy her a new outfit or something like that. And sure enough, he demonstrated that movie demonstrated very well, perhaps what you're talking about, where, all they had to do was pretend like they were in this relationship, and all of a sudden his stock went up, and
his dating stock went up.
Yeah, he started dating other girls, and the guys thought he was really cool. And one of my favorite parts was when he went to the dance, and he's doing some horrible dance, and everybody started copying him because, he's a popular guy, so he must be doing some new move. But it sounds like that's right along the lines of what your research is, or what you researched.
Definitely. The thing is, though, there are, I guess, social prescriptions against pursuing someone that's already in a relationship. So, by virtue of being with a partner, your stock goes up, but then people are disinclined to pursue you because trying to pry you away from the other partner would require substantial effort.
Right.
So there is a bit of a risk. There is a bit of a risk-reward kind of balance there. We do know that if someone is pre-approved, they're more desirable if they're currently single. So for example, some of my research, one project I did looked at people that had been in relationships, but that were currently single. So the people that had a partner previously were considered far more desirable than people that were actually with a partner already currently. Yeah, and so the idea being that, a lot of people don't really want to go after someone who's already taken. It's just got to be too much effort. It's not socially desirable. There's a whole host of other implications to that a lot of people don't want to be involved in. But if someone's, single and they've got that kind of endorsement from a prior relationship, then they're considered more desirable.
Now, does the for lack of a better categorizer, does the social status of the endorser matter very much? Like, does it matter for a guy, for example, does it matter the social status of the female that he was in a previous relationship with? Does that matter as much?
It definitely does. Especially for males. We do know that males with attractive partners, highly physically attractive partners, are considered more desirable than males with lowly physically attractive partners. So it's kind of like the man has been able to attract this lady that has presumably several options. If she's really attractive, she could probably, have her pick of partners to an extent. But for whatever reason, she's chosen him. So there must be something really, really good about him that's allowed him to attract her. Whereas a guy that's got a kind of average looking girlfriend, there may not even really be anything that's special about him. There is an assumption that most people in the course of their lifetime will pair with a person of the opposite sex at least once, and presumably a lot more than that. So there's nothing to secure a partner is no real feat by itself, but to secure a physically attractive partner almost requires that there's something special about you.
Interesting.
So there's definitely a bias there.
Yeah. Now, the way that you were talking about that, I assume that means that it isn't necessarily the same the other way around.
Not to anywhere near the same degree. We know mate copying occurs in both men and women. Studies have demonstrated that it goes both ways. But generally what you see is that the phenomenon is a lot stronger in women. So in women viewing men that have had or are currently with a partner. So it does work for women and for men, but it's far more powerful, or the effect is far bigger, I should say, for women copying other women, if that makes sense.
Sure.
It's larger?
Yeah, the magnitude of the effect is larger. So in a sample of 100 women, more would copy than in a sample of 100 men, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, very interesting. So when we think about this, has the research or your research found that this happens very often? Is this something that happens to all of us all the time, or is it something that kind of comes earlier in our life, maybe during our adolescent years or during our early adult years, and goes away? I'm interested in the frequency in which this influences us.
Yeah, right. So there's definitely it definitely happens quite frequently. Probably more than most people would think. Like I said before, a lot of this is operating at an unconscious level. So it's an implicit information source that we're receiving. We do know that mate copying is far more prevalent among younger women than among older women. The reason for this, there's a few possible explanations, but one presumed reason is that young women are just less experienced. They're more uncertain. They haven't had a lot of experience selecting a mate. Certainly if they're adolescent women, they probably haven't had some experience as someone, say, in their 30s. Older women tend to have more practice at the task. They tend to be more confident in their decisions. So they don't, in a sense, they don't need to make copy as much. But it's certainly less prevalent as women and men get older.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with more experience, we rely on that less because I guess we're drawing on our own experience at that point.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. It's just like with any task. If you're learning something, a good idea is to watch someone who's already accomplished at it and see what they do. If you've had experience doing the task, if you're really confident at it, you don't need to do that.
Right.
There's no point in looking over your shoulder at the guy next to you because you know what you're doing. So women or men that have had experience in the mate selection task are kind of already accomplished at it, and they don't need additional information.
That makes
Certainly not as much.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
You know, I'm thinking, as I'm listening to you, Ryan, people are going to listen to this and say, well, I wonder if this is something I can practice to get better at it.
Yeah.
And my assumption would be is it's not something that you can practice. It's just some intuitive, almost instinctual characteristic that we seem to possess.
Yep, you're right. And it's funny you should say that. There is a company, I believe it's in the US, that I was reading about just the other day. And they actually, they systematize all this mate copying stuff. Except they don't call it mate copying. It's called pre-selection or something. So what they do is they, kind of funny, they will hire out like a date for the evening, a female acquaintance or accomplice, if you will. And the job of the female accomplice is to go around and kind of like sell you to other girls. So other women will approach you, and you can approach other women with the confidence that you've already been kind of pre-approved in a sense by someone else. So yeah, it's a I guess you'd liken it to an escort service in a sense. I mean, obviously there's no sexual interaction that takes place. These women, it's a totally legitimate business. There's nothing goes on underneath clothes. But yeah, so the women essentially just try and get you dates with other women.
So Ryan, wait a minute. I need to get this right. So
somehow we missed out on this business plan.
No, if I was really good looking, I could hire myself out.
Well, if you were a woman.
No, if I was a man.
Well, it doesn't really work as well when men do it.
Oh, really?
As I said before, the effect is a lot bigger when women see other women. Wow. So when women see highly attractive women, the effect is a lot bigger than if a man sees another attractive man.
Okay. Well,
so I mean, you could do it.
Calm down.
He wouldn't be as
he was just looking for an opportunity to go out on dates. That's all.
Yeah.
He was looking for an opportunity to go out.
I hadn't thought about the entrepreneurial aspects of this. I was thinking more of the practice effects. But that's interesting. I'll have to. We have many of those kinds of sites here in the U.S.
Yeah.
We're always looking for shortcuts. That's it.
Yeah. Well, they help.
I guess so. Well, you know, and as I said earlier, I was thinking about the implications of this, even clinically. And you know, a lot of times we work with patients who struggle with relationships, just interpersonal relationships. It doesn't have to necessarily be romantic relationships, but just interpersonal relationships. Is there a similar effect just on platonic relationships, or is this primarily romantic? Or has research even looked at that yet?
Yeah, that's not really something I've personally looked at or even come across in research that I've seen. I did conduct a study where men were surrounded by women friends who they were explicitly described as in a platonic relationship with, and even that boosted their stock. So you don't actually need to have a partner for the mate copying thing to work. Just being around someone that's highly sought after increases your social value.
Very interesting.
Brian, another question. I'm sure.
Yeah.
How do you sort out the attractiveness literature from mate copying?
Okay, so the where mate copying seems to be going at the moment is dividing the attractiveness of consorts or opposite sex partners into categories like highly attractive, averagely attractive, lowly attractive. So attractiveness is generally it's generally objectively evaluated beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
So someone is considered highly attractive if they've already been pre-rated as being that way by a panel of hundreds or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, people obviously can be, anywhere in the spectrum of attractiveness, but we do know that there is a strong bias toward highly attractive people versus lowly attractive people.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
So it would be the model, the effect of the model.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting, and it's interesting too that certainly it sounds like a lot of this research focuses on the physical nature of attractiveness as opposed to personality and humor and some of the other more personality traits of attractiveness.
Yeah. I mean, things like this are they're kind of tricky to convey in a short kind of exposure to stimulus. Someone being attractive, physically attractive, you can immediately discern. Someone who has great personality generally takes someone more time to realize that.
Right.
So it's not really something you can see in someone straight away. Whereas you can look at someone and quickly figure out they are attractive or they're not so attractive. You can quickly evaluate their physical condition, I guess. But things like attitude, personality, like I said, they're harder to convey, and they take longer. So you really need longer experiments. And at the moment, most of the literature has been looking at kind of short experiments that can be done in, half an hour or so. But yeah, this is probably where we're going, like looking at the attractiveness of someone inside rather than just peripheral features like their attractiveness.
Right.
Brian, while we're on this attractiveness, can I ask one more question about that?
Sure.
Okay. From an evolutionary standpoint, men are attracted to women with a certain body shape, the small waist, large hips for reproduction potential. And that's again, it's instinctive. It's not something that occurs at a conscious level, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then mate copying doesn't occur at a conscious level. So we have these, as people try to select a mate, we have these two subconscious factors at work. Is there an interaction? Does one seem to predominate?
I'm not entirely sure. Like you say, we do make judgments at an unconscious level. Partly because it's really quick. It's quick and easy. Mm-hmm. If we were to sit down and write out all the pros and cons of a person, that would take time, obviously.
Right.
So if we can come to a snap judgment, it's a lot more efficient. And so a lot of our survival is about being efficient at tasks,
right.
Doing things as efficiently as possible. So we don't really know if one predominates over the other, or at least I'm not aware of any research that suggests either way, but it would be something that would be a useful area of exploration in the future, for sure.
And one related question, is there an age effect? I'm thinking of the younger woman who will be attracted to an older man because of his potential to support her lifestyle. Is there an age effect in this, or is it pretty constant across ages?
Definitely is. There definitely is. Like I was saying before, it's more prevalent among younger women.
Mm-hmm.
Less prevalent among older women. So younger women are more inclined to copy the preferences of older women because older women are the experts, if you will. They're more accomplished at the task. However, there's not a linear relationship there. At some point, older women become less desirable to copy the preferences of.
Right.
So a young woman is obviously not going to copy the preferences of someone in their 80s, 90s.
Mm-hmm.
They would be inclined to copy the preferences of someone in their 30s because they have experience in the task and they probably have good taste, for want of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you're right. There is definitely an age gradient, but it's not linear. It's women kind of, they're considered valuable to copy up until a point, and then they kind of come down again.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
It does. It does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And how does this affect? I know you were saying earlier that people, because of the social implications and because of some other things, people do not tend to seek out others or a mate that's already involved in a relationship. So, but is there any research that talks about how this affects marriages and other relationships?
Yeah. So we know that. Actually, have you heard of the wedding ring effect?
Yes.
Wedding ring effect, yeah. Okay, so for those that haven't, it's basically the idea that if you wear a wedding band, you're considered more desirable by the opposite sex.
Right.
Basically. So what research has shown is that that's not really the case. People that wear a wedding band indicate a lot of things. They indicate that they are committed to someone else. They indicate that they're not necessarily promiscuous. They indicate that they probably have a stable kind of personality. Someone has chosen them as marriage partner. So there's probably some desirable characteristics about them. But they also indicate that they're going to be very hard to get, or to pry away from their partner.
Right.
So someone wearing a wedding band is presumably committed to someone else. So securing them as a partner would be quite difficult. So people tend to just say too hard. I'm not gonna.
Mm-hmm.
So although they might be considered desirable, theoretically, wearing a wedding band isn't likely to help you pick up at a bar, for example. But to answer your question, we do know that infidelity occurs in a lot of marriages. And we do know that there are people that deliberately pursue married people that are already in a committed relationship. However, the frequency with which this occurs is slight. So it's, I think The current estimates are that it occurs in about 1 in 10 people, 1 in 10 married people will break up their marriage to be with someone else. I think the latest research I read. As far as how mate copying affects the formation of marriages, we don't really know. It's kind of unclear. It's an area that again is something that's worth exploring in the future. But like I said before, mate copying is such a kind of newish phenomenon. There's so much that we don't know about it. So we're only really scratching the surface of what we understand about mate copying. And it's a rich field of inquiry, but we just haven't got there yet. We haven't researched anywhere near enough stuff.
Right. Well, and I think that just kind of putting together some of the things you've mentioned, it would sound very, it sounds like mate copying is something that's certainly involved in the initial attraction and initial initiation of the relationship. But then as the relationship continues and progresses and they learn more about each other, then you start getting some other aspects of personality and temperament and those kinds of things that begin to influence sort of maybe the stability and ongoing foundation of the relationship.
Exactly. Yeah, so, the formation of relationships is obviously very different to the maintenance of relationships. What we might initially look for in a partner, be it peripheral characteristics like their physical appearance, etc., these soon become overwhelmed by other characteristics, so we care more about the person's attitude, their personality, their general disposition, their beliefs, etc. So mate copying only really comes into play in the initial stages of a relationship.
Okay. So we worked really hard, done really well today talking about how relationships really get started. And so I'm thinking about, Valentine's Day is just around the corner. And I'm wondering, is there much from this research or from the other research that you've done? We'll talk in just a moment about one of your websites that you helped found. But is there much information from this area of research that would help with relationships?
I mean, yes, obviously, a lot of it is common sense. I mean, the basic idea of mate copying is that people that are sought after are considered desirable. So people that have been pre-approved by opposite sex partners are in turn considered more attractive, desirable to future partners. One thing I think is important to note is that there's not a linear relationship here. It's not the case that the more partners you've had, the more desirable you become. I did some research where I varied the number of ex-partners people had between 0 and 5. And I found that people with no ex-partners were considered undesirable, as you might expect. People with 1 or 2 were considered fairly desirable, but then their desirability dropped off after that. So if that had, 5 ex-partners, they were considered really undesirable. Possibly because they're promiscuous, they're probably not looking to commit. There may be something about them that hasn't allowed them to maintain a relationship. They might also have been exposed to various sexually transmitted diseases if they're, prolifically promiscuous. So I guess the message here is that it's not advisable to go around boasting about how many partners you've been with. Or if it is, if you've been with one or two, maybe that's all right. But if you've been with a string of ex-partners, you may want to keep that information to yourself.
Richard, you're going to have to take that off your business card.
Yeah.
You don't need that information on your
have
business
those
card
all
anymore.
reprinted now. Okay.
Exactly.
But that certainly makes sense. It makes sense that it would be you would reach a threshold where the positive effects would drop off.
Exactly.
And it's a good case for the efficiency, because you can make these decisions very quickly based on that single data point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very efficient. Yeah.
So any other points? I talk a little bit about your the website that you helped found. It's a lot about relationships and partners and things like that.
Okay, so I've got a few blogs. One of them is called The Love Report, thelovereport.com. And so in that, I explore not only mate copying, but relationships in general. So, obviously why people get into relationships, but then what happens afterwards. How do you maintain a relationship? What characteristics are more likely to end a relationship or keep going? So I guess that particular blog is more looking at the overall holistic approach to relationships rather than just the kind of initial stages, which is where the mate copying comes in.
Right.
Yeah.
I was gonna mention that too. That it sounds like a great perhaps message for listeners is that the mate copying is really the initial part of how you may join with someone.
Yep.
But then you have all the work to do.
Exactly.
To keep the relationship going, and that's where the Love Report would be a great resource to learn more about how relationships can be successful. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's a lot more to relationship than just the formation. The formation of relationship is really a very small part of the actual relationship. Love Report is looking at, factors that contribute to happiness in a relationship. Things that spice up a relationship. So the area of relationships in general is infinitely bigger than the small phenomenon of mate copying. But there's so much we don't know about relationships in general. I think to kind of try and understand everything about relationships is just too ambitious. So I've kind of focused on one small part, like the formation stage of relationships.
That makes sense. It certainly makes your dissertation much more realistic that you can accomplish it.
Exactly.
Perfect.
If I was to write a thesis on relationships, it might run to be 300 volumes and take me 20 lifetimes. But mate copying is something you can condense down into 100,000 words.
Right. Well, that's great. Well, are there any other points or tips or anything like that you would like for the listener to share with the listeners?
Not really. I mean, just, be aware that a lot of this stuff is happening unconsciously. To try and consciously manipulate the things like mate copying is pretty difficult. Even to fully appreciate it can be quite quite difficult. So, just be aware that this is going to happen anyway. There are things that are going to happen on an unconscious level, and we can't control everything. Mate copying is just one really small aspect of relationships. There's so much else that happens in and around a relationship. So even being able to master the phenomenon of mate copying is not gonna help you out in long-term relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, there's so much involved in relationships. It's just, it's way too big to even try and appreciate in one lifetime.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So,
Fair enough.
So tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can follow you, where they can get more information and more information about relationships and mate copying.
Sure. So I have my primary blog, like I said, is The Love Report. The Love Report, one word.com. I also have a psychology blog. I'm a psychologist by trade. So I have a blog called thatpsychsite.com, again, all one word. And in that blog, I look at various psychological issues surrounding relationships, but also, social dynamics and stuff. I blog for Psychology Today, which some of your listeners may have heard about. I have a blog on there called The Mating Game. I also have a Twitter at The Love Report. You can get me on Facebook, Facebook/The Love Report. Or you can email me, lovereport@gmail.com. So
you grabbed Love Report for everything. How did that
happen? Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much.
Good
as much as I could.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'll have links to all of those things in the show notes so people can jump on there and follow you and see what more you write about and where else your research is taking you. So we really appreciate your time this evening.
Awesome. No worries. Thank you very much.
All right. And you are, of course, welcome back anytime, whenever new things are coming out and you want to share it with the listeners, or, you just let us know and we'll have you back and we'll talk some more.
Sounds good.
By all means.
All right. Perfect.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Okay,
thank you.
Ryan.
And Richard, I'll tell you what I learned today. I learned today that the reason that you're on the podcast with me is because of your experience of being on podcasts. It really attracted me to you being my co-host with me.
Mate copying.
Mate copying.
I'm
That's
a
right.
podcast mate copy.
That's right.
Okay.
So, all right, folks, we will be back with another episode. So until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.